Hi, and welcome back to AAU Talks on AAU TV. My name is Ajiman Ochrodako. I'm glad to always have you watching me every time on AAU Talks, the voice of higher education in Africa. So we bring you topical issues and matters affecting higher education in Africa. And today's it's a very special episode because, for over a year now, this institution has been charting the course of leading and driving the growth of women and young girls' participation in higher education. And, through consultative efforts, multi-stakeholder approaches, bringing all the stakeholders involved together with the AAU and other gender-based institutions to ensure that women in higher education positions, young ladies and also women generally in higher education are given the room to explore and advance. You'll be eager to know which institution this is, but it is the Women in Higher Education Network. And today I have with me a founding member to tell us all about the institution and what they have for us this year, March 8th. So don't go anywhere, stick with us. We'll be back for this break and then you know who she is, and we zoom right to discussions as usual. Stay with us. You're welcome back to AAU Talks. My name is Ajiman Ochrodako, the voice of higher education in Africa, as we always serve you. And today I have with me a founding member of the Women in Higher Education Network, the network which is over a year old and is making great strides in promoting women in higher education, giving them opportunity to grow in their career and also contribute and mentor other young ladies. So with me in the studio is Mrs. Felicia Kuagbezi, and she is the Communications and Publications Officer at the Association of African Universities. Felicia, you're welcome to AAU Talks.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ajiman. So like you rightly said, my name is Felicia Kuagbezi, and I work here at the AAU as the Communication and Publications Officer, as well as one of the founding members of WoHEN.
Splendid.
There are others, if I can quickly mention them. We have Dr. Beatrice Njenga, formerly of the African Union Commission.
Okay.
And we also have Ms. Nodumod Lamini, who is the Director of ICT Communications and Knowledge Management here at the AAU. We also have Mrs. Sheila Boama. She is formerly of NAPTEX in Ghana. And she's actually from the industry side, if I can put it that way. Industry, but they work closely with higher education. Then we also have Dr. Elizabeth from Cameroon, as well as a number of other high-level women who have been discussing and who muted the idea of actually consolidating the various efforts that we've been doing so far and of actually putting together the network.
Great.
Because there are so many things that has been done prior to the formal launching of the network. You did mention that WoHEN is a year old.
Yeah.
That is accurate.
Yeah.
But in terms of what the AAU has been doing for women in higher education, this has actually gone on for so many years, because all the past strategic plans and the current ones ensure that prioritization of women in higher education, trying to advance issues related to gender equity, have always been sort of prioritized in strategic plans.
We'll be talking about the role AAU has been playing to support women in higher education. But let's start with the foundation. How did it all begin, being a year old, and how did it all start, the inception of it, and the brains, which brains came together to create the Women in Higher Education Network, and how did it begin to set sail and make such great impact within a year? How did it go?
Okay, I think, like I mentioned, WoHEN is a year old, but there are so many things that we have done.
I'd love to know.
And in terms of those who have been parts of founding it, I just mentioned some of them. But like I also mentioned, there were other high-level women who have been sending in submissions, who have actually been trying to promote and to encourage the network and to really contribute in terms of the key issues that the network should focus on. So this network was formally launched during the AAU's 15th Quadrennial General Conference, which was hosted virtually. And this was in July 2021. That was when the network was formally launched. But prior to that, even on International Women's Day last year, we hosted an event as well, International Women's Day. It was also a consultative forum where we brought together all the women in African higher education to contribute to what WoHEN should focus on, basically. So WoHEN is hosted currently by the AAU Secretariat. And like I mentioned, we wanted the women to contribute. We didn't want it to be like just 4 or 5 people sitting together and planning for women in African higher education.
Yeah.
So we during that consultative session, the women were given the platform to really talk about their issues because they are in the field, they are in the universities, they know the various issues, and so the women were given the platform. They were talking about issues related to motherhood penalty.
Yeah.
For instance, if I'm a PhD student, I find myself pregnant at a particular time.
Yeah.
It's examination time, and I'm not able to sit for my exams because, let's assume, that's the same period that I happen to be in labor.
Yeah, very uncomfortable time.
So I couldn't write the exams.
Yeah.
Now, if I come back ready to write, should I actually pay and re-register to take that exams, for instance?
Okay.
Some women have been away on maternity leave and they have returned to find out that some of their junior colleagues have even been promoted instead of them being promoted. So there were a whole lot of other issues which happen in the university, and so it was very necessary for us to consult widely to let the women input into what the network should be in terms of the constitution for the network, in terms of the focus areas for the network, in terms of identifying the gap that the network should focus on.
Sure.
So yes, it's hosted by the AAU Secretariat, but it's much more beyond that, if I should just put it that way.
That's a very wonderful background over there with women all over Africa behind the scenes, putting together resources to make the women power felt. But it may sound like a group of women coming together to chart a very positive course on their own without men's support. The women in higher education who have their own plight and own grievances and want to really chart the course to create solutions. What has been the main factor in WoHEN in the first place? Okay,
so I think as women, we don't exist in society alone. We exist, we coexist. Everything we do it with male colleagues, with our male partners. And so as WoHEN, of course, it's a network for women, but we also want to bring on board men who support women empowerment.
Okay.
So, for instance, for the event we are hosting, I'm sure you would come back to that, but for this year, we are hosting an event on March 8th to mark the International Women's Day.
Sure.
As part of the high panel discussion that we'll be holding, which will be facilitated by Dr. Beatrice Njenga, we have a male panelist. Because like I mentioned, we don't exist alone. It's very important that we bring the men along. Otherwise, 10 years or 100 years down the line, we need to start all over again by setting up another network which would promote the affairs of men.
Yeah.
And also to mention, let me give you some statistics.
Okay.
Because the statistics shows that currently we don't have a lot of women at the top. So it's the men who are at the top. And at the top means they are the ones on the table. They are the ones sitting around the table or the ones in the room where the key decisions are made. So if you don't have a man who understands that we need to promote gender equity, if you don't have a man on the table who understands that we have to put in place specific mechanisms and strategy to empower the women as well, it means that we'll be losing out. So it's very important that we sensitize the men. So a lot of the advocacy initiatives that we are implementing, we actually do it, of course, targeting the women, targeting the younger women as well, but also involving the men. I wanted to give you some statistics of the current situation.
Sure.
There was a research that was conducted by Eduopon et al. In 2017, and they were trying to determine the place of women in higher education management, okay?
Yeah.
They did this using the University of Education, Winneba in Ghana for this case study.
Okay.
And they found that women were highly underrepresented.
Okay.
So they realized that women constitute 21% of the total senior member academic staff.
20%?
Yes, 21%.
21%?
Yes.
Out of 100%?
Yes. And 25% of the senior member administrative staff. And for very top level positions, such as deans, the total number of women they found as deans of faculties were only 8%. And for the very high level where we have vice chancellor, pro vice chancellor, as well as registrar, it was 100% male.
Oh, really?
This means like 0% female representation. This is just a case in one university.
There may be arguments
Okay.
that if we try to institute affirmative action, then we're trying to just create an open ground without credibility, because we have to make it competitive for everyone to prove your worth and credibly merit the role. So you are calling for an affirmative action for women to be given room to occupy higher positions in higher education. Isn't that perhaps bending the system just to favor women in the case that you present right here?
Not necessarily, and I think other people have made the cases that we don't have women who are capable of occupying, women who are capable. But I beg to differ.
Okay.
We have a lot of women who are more than capable on this continent, a lot of women who are more than capable in our various higher education institutions. But like we said, because we are women, we need to create the room which will make us to be much more effective. Much more effective. I think I was referring to the example of a woman, for instance, being pregnant and not being able to write her exams on that particular, but yet she has to come back and come and pay before she can write.
Sure.
But can the institution consider, because it's not my fault that I'm a woman.
Sure.
I'm a woman. I have other roles.
Yeah.
I'm a mother. So I have other roles that I have to equally fulfill.
Sure.
So the institution should create the room which would accommodate all the things that we carry along as a woman.
Okay.
I think we recently did a case study on one of the women who are leading the African Centers of Excellence.
Okay.
Professor Grace Joktan, she's one of the center leaders. And she did mention in her interview that as a woman, you have to put in twice as much as effort as your colleague man. But that shouldn't be the case. Why? Because you have several roles to play, and sometimes it's difficult. Yeah. You may have 8 hours of work, and after that you go home, you just relax and you sleep. But it's not the case for a woman. We all go home and we have other roles to play. Okay. Or you may go home and still be able to continue to work through the night. But assuming she's a fresh mother, she has other roles to play. So in terms of intellectual ability, in terms of being able to lead a team, in terms of we come on board with so many other things that probably you may not come on board with. We are women, like the hen in WoHEN. Yeah. We are like the hen who care for all our chicks. So we make sure that our chicks are well taken care of. So in higher education or in institutions, for instance, we have that innate ability of proper human relations where we can relate to all the students and all the staff members. There are things that, some decisions that you as a man may take that I would say a woman might be able to, not to say that...
The men are watching, they begin, I think we begin to fall 21st century men in higher education, okay? See how we can also support. You see, it's not like we're trying to oppose women or let's say compete, but understanding your grievances, maybe perhaps we can take an aspect of your burdens and see how you can have a safe walk through higher education, because we want to support you. I think men want to support, right? Sure, we're good men.
But generally, this thing is not starting today. Okay. From society, from our cultural background and things, women sort of have been delineated a little bit to the background. I mean, a cultural dance there are some societies the woman is supposed to just be seen and not being heard.
Exactly.
In African society, some time ago, I can say that a lot of things have improved. But in some time ago, where a family had to take the decision of 2 of our kids are ready to go to the university. There's a man and there's a woman. They would say, let the man go to the university and let the woman sit at home. Yeah. This thing has been long existing. It's not only today. So that's why we need to be deliberate about the woman, the women empowerment. If we are not deliberate about it, if we don't give it that prominence, really we may end up losing our females in terms of they taking up further education. If we do a study now to find out how many women are pursuing their PhD, you find that we have much fewer women. There were situations where some women have been offered scholarship, but they actually wrote to decline it because
of
because they've been given an
situations.
ultimatum by their partners that if you travel to go and do this PhD, I mean, their marriages are ending and things like that. This may look like they are not really serious issues, but they are. And so that's why we have to be deliberate about the women empowerment aspects. Otherwise, we'll lose our women and they will not really climb up to the top.
You would have to stay with us for more of women in higher education in Africa. And you know, there are a whole lot that women will have to say. If it has been a smooth journey through up to this point, or been a tough one, stay with us for more on WoHEN. Welcome back to AAU Talks on AAU TV, and we're discussing women in higher education network. And basically, this year marks another. We've seen an upcoming program in March, which mostly on the International Women's Day. WoHEN has programs in these times, and last year's theme was "Choose to Challenge." And there was an inspiration behind the theme for last year. And this year, it's a whole unique theme. And I want to spill the beans right here. She will do it. So back to you, founding member of WoHEN. And want to know, what happened last year? You know, last year was the foundation point. And your theme was choose to challenge. I mean, it speaks volume of how determined you were to break, or let's say halve the divides and really overcome the hurdles and move for what you want. How did it feel like last year?
Last year was very exciting for us because aside the fact that we were hosting an event to mark the International Women's Day, we were also holding a consultation forum where we were engaging the women in higher education to sort of input into WoHEN. So it was 2 events in one actually, and due to COVID as well, we hosted the event virtually. We had a brilliant keynote address from Professor Margaret King. We also received another high-level keynote address from Professor Sarah Mbi Agong of the African Union Commission, formerly
Very
of African,
insightful.
Yes,
insightful
formerly
people.
of the African Union Commission.
Sure.
Yes, and then there was a panel discussion as well, which featured top women from AUCFR, from that's Dr. Rita Bisunoth. She's actually coming this year again.
Great.
We also had Dr. Beatrice Njenga was there as well. We had quite a number of top women who shared their thoughts with us.
With great influence.
Yes, with great influence, exactly. And we had quite a huge number of participation. So after that event, we actually had a number of people writing to indicate their interest to join WoHEN and, you know, various roles they can play and things like that. So it was very exciting. And just to say that between that and then, WoHEN didn't go to sleep. Like I mentioned, the network is relatively new, but there are so many things we've been doing in the past. For instance, we've organized 3 high-level international conferences.
All right.
The first one was hosted here in Ghana.
Okay.
We hosted one in Kenya as well. And then the last one was hosted in Nigeria in collaboration with the African University of Science and Technology, AUST.
All right.
And these ones were titled The Women in Leadership Positions in Higher Education, where we're trying to create the platform for networking, the platform for women who have achieved, who have actually climbed up the ladder to inspire the younger ones that are coming up. And like I said, it was scientific conferences, so there were scientific papers, research papers that were presented as well. Now, aside these conferences, we've also undertaken some commissioned studies. There's a study that we commissioned to understudy why there are fewer women in fields like STEM. We wanted to understand the proximate determinants barriers, the barriers and the various factors which sort of limits the full participation of women in fields such as STEM. And this study also came up with very interesting findings, which tells us that as WoHEN and as all of us as higher education stakeholders, we really have a lot to do in terms of changing perceptions, in terms of changing mindsets, and things like that. So as part of the findings, the study found that about 26% of the population said they didn't involve themselves in STEM fields, mainly because they think it's a field meant for men.
Okay.
So there's a huge perception there that we have to change. They think these are difficult. It's a difficult field.
And that is women self-motivated thoughts, not like someone really imposed those thoughts on them. You think
it's because
the system.
It's the system. I mean, you pick these up as you grow up. As you grow up, if you find that they're always introducing scientists and it's men you see all the time. If you find science is being portrayed as you stay in the laboratory all the time, hours upon hours trying to come up with research findings. If you portray it in a way that is not attractive, but imagine where we are actually showcasing the female role models that they can aspire to. If on our TVs, if on, you pick things up as you go up.
Yeah.
If we try to change the mindset and attach it from like junior high school, from primary, you try to expose them, you organize mentorship programs where you go to the classrooms with women who are really contributing in fields like that, and they see them and they relate to them and they engage with them, you see that perceptions are changing. So there are a lot we can do. We need to undertake advocacy. There are so many other things that we can do. So that is on another side. We also plan to work closely with other sister networks. There are quite a number of other networks that have been working hard to champion the cause of women in that field. So it's part of the things that WoHEN will be doing, working closely with these sister networks to write proposals together, to get funding, to to champion the cause of women, run capacity building workshops, quite a number of things, a whole lot of things lined up for WoHEN.
It seems a little bit gloomy when intense advocacy is made. Advocacy in Africa has been one of the biggest things I've ever seen so far. People are advocating so many things for peace and security, and even for equal opportunities for women, gender equality and all that. But advocacy seems not to really move the mountains. Rather, implementation and some sort of catalyst approach. Do you have those spares? Do you have those machinery to cause catalysts, to catalyze this whole movement and get implementation done? Let's say you pick a university in Africa and then you're able to turn things around and create an equality. Do you look forward for that impact?
Yes, of course, we look forward to it. And thanks for your question. And you're actually very right, because we seem, all of us as a society, we seem to talk a lot without really walking the talk, or without really following through to ensure that what we are
have been checklisted. Everything,
they are not actually being materialized.
Yes.
So that is one of the key things that WoHEN wants to do, in terms of, and also by virtue of the fact that WoHEN is hosted by the Association of African Universities.
Yeah.
So you were asking whether we have the machinery. I would say yes, because we have the over 400 plus member institutions of the Association of African Universities. And if you also heard me, I said beyond the women in higher education, women who find themselves in other institutions like the NGOs, like the development partner institutions who are implementing programs for women are all invited to be part of WoHEN.
Okay.
So all of that is a huge resource that we can leverage on, and also by bringing the men on board, because they are some way, somehow currently the ones in the boardroom where the decisions are taken.
Yeah.
So we are bringing all these people on board so that at the point where decisions are taken as to implementation, they have been sensitized enough, they have really been involved in the process and can ensure that money is allocated. For instance, I don't know whether I mentioned the example of the African Centers of Excellence project, where is a project where the AAU is the regional facilitation unit, and it is being implemented or is being funded by the World Bank and the AFD, together with participating governments, 11 participating governments in Africa. And as part of the disbursement linked indicators, the indicators for which reason they should sort of disburse money to you, one of them is regionality and then recruitment of female students, be it masters or PhD students. So this is really a way of ensuring that, which means if you recruit more females, you get more money, basically. So that is implementation. It's not just working.
See.
So those are kind of some of the things that we want to see happen where we are putting in place specific measures to ensure that it's not just talking, but you are actually implementing it and you are achieving it. And of course, the centers would want more money for their research, for the development of infrastructure, and for all the wonderful things that they are doing. And so they would want to meet the DLI, the Disbursement Linked Indicator. So we need to engage broadly all these stakeholders so that at the point where implementation matters, the issues of women are also prioritized.
You know, some would say some women didn't get an opportunity to go straight into higher education and then gain those top positions and now be appealing for much tougher positions. They were actually in the other aspects of higher education. For example, in the university setting, we have the non-academic setting where women in janitry, women in other areas, in catering and all that, and also women in the informal sector. These are all women who are facing, in one way or the other, such dampness on their rights, infringement, reduction, intimidation, and all that. Are these women also not considered as parts of this of your focus in WoHEN? Or is WoHEN only for women who find themselves in that management, administrative positions in higher education and are seeking for a much more level up? Is it for women in that sector or women generally who may find themselves in anywhere? Does WoHEN look forward to expand their focus in the future?
I think you've raised a very important a very important question, because like I mentioned, our main focus is on women in higher education, but we also have all these ones you mentioned. I would say they are in TVET, and TVET is also a huge focus. So I would say that they are also involved, and even if they are not involved directly, WoHEN will ensure to undertake programs or events where we create the platform to change perceptions, and where we would be bringing those who are in the management positions in those institutions, because you need to engage them, stakeholder consultation and engagement and exposure, because you have to expose to them. Sometimes people are not really aware. Sometimes they are aware, but they don't take certain steps deliberately, but other times it's just because people are not exposed to key issues. So WoHEN would make sure to implement activities that covers all these groups of women that you've mentioned. I think we will not leave anyone out, because if we want to move forward and have a better gender equity in our society, then we have to be all encompassing, even though you may focus on a particular group, but as much as possible, as much as you can implement other activities which will bring all these other stakeholders on board. Yeah.
You know, in WoHEN's effort, as we wrap up, in WoHEN's efforts to reduce inequalities and give women an upper hand in higher education, you know, it calls for more development of women academic and intellectual capacity. Has WoHEN provided platforms for scholarships for women in higher education, so to practicalize the movement, so you can grow your CV, or let's say your credibility or your intellect, and also rub shoulders with the men, so-called, who are taking the lead? What has been done about that?
I think I mentioned this. We want to create the platform for mentoring, and as part of the plans that WoHEN plans to run this year, we have a list of capacity building workshops that we want to run, because it's very important. Sometimes you also have to just expose the women to how those who are already at the top made it. So that is where we talk about mentorship. So it will be good to bring the women together, let them know of how they should prepare themselves, because it's not only about I'm a woman, I should be given the position, or we need to have a female representation in a governing board. It's also, like you might have mentioned earlier, it's also about what you are bringing on board. Your intellect, your human relations, your qualifications. Are you even qualified? Because they open the position, there's a vacancy and you can apply. But at least you should meet the conditions. So we need to make sure that they know how to prepare themselves, both academically, both through other soft skills and all of those things, by learning from those who are there, and to prepare yourself so that you can also fit into the role, because you should be qualified. In as much as we are promoting women empowerment and women climbing to the top and being present where it matters, you should be qualified. So I think as much as possible, we want to bring the women along, expose them, would adopt strategies like mentorship, working together with other sister networks. There are other sister networks actually, and somebody might be wondering how different we are from networks like Fawe. There's another one which is being championed by the Forum for African Women, in Women Vice Chancellors.
Sure. And
then there's also the African Union Center for International Women and Girls. So just to say that FAWE and AUCFR, that's the one for African Union, are basically addressing broadly issues of women at all levels.
Okay.
So they are looking at even the lower levels like senior high school, junior high school, and things like that. And the one by Forum, which is the Forum for African Women Vice Chancellors, that is also championing. This was formed by women ministers, women who are ministers in higher education in Africa. I think 5 of them. That is championing women in STEM. So it's focusing on promoting the cause of women in science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. But at the continental level, there's no body which is broadly addressing the issues
of women in
higher education at a continental level.
That makes WoHEN unique.
Yes, so that is the gap that WoHEN is actually filling.
Great.
Yes.
Great.
It's a membership institution, so people register to join. I'm sure you can display the registration link, or people can maybe write to ndaco@aau.org. That's the lady in charge of day-to-day running of affairs of WoHEN. So people can also write to ndaco@aau.org for any further information, or just to ask how they can join. But I'm sure if they search on our website as well, or on the AAU blog, there is information, especially on the upcoming events and on the network.
So we'll give you a minute just to wrap it up on membership and also this year's program with WoHEN, with your camera right there, so you can just tell us everything.
Okay, I would like to just go through the program. So WoHEN is hosting an event on March 8th, 2022, that is this year, and it started at 10 a.m. GMT, and the theme for this year is breaking the barriers in African higher education, equality today for a sustainable tomorrow. That's the theme for this year. And we would have some keynote presentations. We'd also have a panel discussion. We'll have a Q&A session where people can engage. And I would just like to call on all stakeholders, to especially all the women in African higher education, to come on board to join WoHEN, the Women in Higher Education Network, because from the researches that have been conducted, from the statistics, is not really looking good. There's a lot that we can do. There's a lot we can collaborate and learn amongst ourselves, so that we try to encourage the younger generation, and those who are currently occupying top positions can also share their experience. They can, share their wide experiences with the younger ones. So we are inviting all of you to join us for this year's celebration. We'll be receiving a message from the AAU Secretary General as well. We have Dr. Christine Mushigbe. She is the Vice Chancellor, UNICAF University in Zambia. We have Martha. Martha is the Executive Director for the Forum for African Women Educationists. She would also be giving us address. Dr. Beatrice Njenga would be moderating the high-level panel discussion. She's currently the Deputy Vice Chancellor for Institutional Advancement and at the International Leadership University in Kenya. We have Professor Teresa Akenja. She is the first Vice President for the Association of African Universities and also the Vice Chancellor for the University of Eldoret. So there are a lot of top women. We have Dr. Rita Bisunoth. We also have Professor Amani El Sharif, who is the Vice President for Pan-African University and also the coordinator for AAU North Africa Regional Office. We also have a student panelist, because we believe that the voices of the students should not be lost. They are the future leaders, and they are currently the leaders as well.
Absolutely.
So we have a student leader joining us. She's a PhD candidate from the University of Cape Coast in Ghana. Then we have Dr. Insikak Abasi Etim. He is the male panelist. He he's with the Department of Agricultural Economics and Extension at the University of Oyo, Nigeria, and a host of other top-level women who will be joining us. So don't miss out. Do book this date and join us on March 8th, 2022, as we celebrate International Women's Day under the Women in Higher Education Network, which is hosted by the Association of African Universities.
Splendid. So we can't talk much about it. Just waiting to see how great it will be in the month of March to celebrate the International Women's Day. Thank you so much, Felicia, for your time with us on AAU Talks, and thank you very much for your time as well. Always booking time to watch AAU Talks as we discuss higher education policy and also matters affecting higher education in Africa. It's a global quest that we ensure that we reduce inequalities and also promote gender equality, and you and I are all involved. So with your effort and my efforts, we can also pave a way to have an equal society where women and men all have an equal chance to contribute to the nation's development. Have a nice day. My name is Advocacy with AAU Talks. See you next time. Bye.